It's an incredible honor to say you play with the Dallas Cowboys.
You're simply the best.
That was as close as you can get to heaven, buddy, without dying.
That is the receiver. Time.
What do we got, 39?
8 weeks ago, we stood in this same spot.
Getting 7 points here.
All 6 of you worked your tail off. 5 seconds left. 4, you dreaming? 3,
Number 3, Brett, number 3.
3, more to go.
Evidently 2 rushing 2 weeks.
This Top 10 Countdown features just one team, the Dallas Cowboys. The Cowboys' past success and high profile is what makes this show possible.
I think that that's fair to do the Cowboys and not the Buccaneers or the Bengals.
They are the Dallas Cowboys, America's team.
Cowboys are definitely deserving of being America's team.
Oh, well, that's just ridiculous. America's team would mean that everyone in America would be wearing their jerseys. Steelers and Eagles, far more purchases of jerseys. They're empirically not America's team.
We realize not everyone is a Cowboys fan.
There's so much hatred.
Like them or not, the Cowboys have a unique lineage of legendary players and personalities.
Well, there's readers and thinkers and double scotch drinkers and soda straw manglers and bar napkin stranglers and teasers and criers and high rolling flyers.
Today, we're counting down the top 10 Dallas Cowboys of all time.
If you are from anywhere outside of Dallas, it's going to make you want to puke. If you're from Dallas, you're thinking one of two things. You're thinking either, why stop at 10? Or you're thinking, why not just call it the top 10 greatest NFL players of all time, because they'd all be Cowboys, right?
This list is more than just the 10 best athletes who happen to sport the silver and blue.
We still have these identifiable players who meant more to us than just the guy who played well on Sunday.
Guys that had an impact on the organization.
So here are the top 10 men who best define what it means to be a Dallas Cowboy.
The number 10 Cowboy of all time, Drew Pearson.
When you think Cowboys of the 70s, Drew Pearson is a big part of it.
You know, he was the original 88 for the Cowboys.
Growing up, I loved Drew Pearson. At first, I didn't really think of, man, why are they giving me this number 88? That's Drew's number. But it was an honor once I found out that they give it to you because they think that you'll be the next great. I was like, oh, this is great. And
Going deep for Drew down the sideline. Touchdown, Dallas Cowboys.
In 1973, Drew Pearson arrived in Dallas with little fanfare.
He's undrafted, and the story goes that he made the team because of a key block that he threw in the end of preseason his rookie year.
I think the thing about Drew that really epitomized his greatness was just the courage and the intestinal fortitude when the chips were on the line.
Throws into the end zone. Touchdown for the Dallas Cowboys. Drew Pearson, number 88.
There were other weapons at the time, but when they absolutely positively had to have something good happen, he was the guy that they looked to.
When you look at critical catches, Drew Pearson, I probably made more than any receiver that's ever played the game.
He was clutch.
Clutch.
The quality in the clutch.
One of the greatest clutch receivers in history.
Come on, Hail Mary.
Just the Hail Mary catch alone puts him in the top 10, I think.
In the 1975 playoffs, Dallas trailed Minnesota late in the fourth quarter. Then Pearson converted a 4th and 16, setting up his legendary Hail Mary catch.
Now is to come the play that one expert said would be talked about as long as the game of football is played.
Well, the Cowboys need a miracle. Roger takes the snap, pumps it once. He's going long. Down the near sideline for Drew Pearson. Pearson makes the catch at the 5. Touchdown! Staubach hit Pearson on a 50-yard touchdown. What you believe in?
Our number 10 Cowboy earned first-team All-Pro honors 3 times.
Pearson wide open, touchdown.
In 1977, he led the NFL in receiving yards while helping the Cowboys to their second world title.
The Dallas Cowboys are the champions of the National Football League.
He's just short of being a Hall of Famer.
Pearson might have made it to Canton and moved up our list if his career wasn't unexpectedly ended before the 1984 season.
I think Drew Pearson would be in the Hall of Fame right now if his career wasn't cut short by a tragic car accident.
He should be in the Ring of Honor at the minimum, and I think he should be in the Hall of Fame.
If you watched them play in that period, you would have said, this guy might be a Hall of Fame player.
I think Drew Pearson deserves a lot of respect for what he did on the football field. Way too low on this list, okay? Drew Pearson definitely has to be top 5.
Harvey Martin, the Cowboys' original sack master, just missed making the list.
This is beautiful Harvey Martin here in a brisk, cold Dallas, Texas.
Martin's fellow pass rusher Ed Too Tall Jones also just missed the cut. For 15 seasons, Too Tall was a household name in Dallas. Danny White could have been nicknamed Just Short. White quarterbacked Dallas to 3 straight NFC championships, but lost all 3 and never escaped the shadow of Roger Staubach.
Roger's a legend. Danny will never be like that.
Next in our countdown is another quarterback who had a tough time in Dallas, but he is a Cowboys legend.
The number 9 Cowboy of all time, Dandy Don Meredith.
A perfect person to put in the top 10 because of what he represents. He is the Cowboys image of the 60s.
When Dallas joined the NFL in 1960, they had little talent and less identity. Dandy Don Meredith from nearby SMU changed that.
When the Cowboys were emerging, you had Tom Landry, who was kind of that stoic, dignified image of the organization that's coming up. So when Dandy Don came along, it was a new look. It was kind of the fun, freewheeling quarterback that had confidence and ability.
We're going to whip him. We're going to whip him.
A new, fresh face for the organization.
In the huddle, he was just, loose.
Loose best describes Dandy Don on and off the field.
He loved life.
I would say one thing that makes Don unique is his personality.
You guys want some close-ups?
Obviously a character in the history of the National Football League.
Because that's what kind of guy he is. A real turd.
He's one of the guys that you look back and you're like, man, I would have loved to play with Don Meredith back in the day.
Where are you going to stick it? Riding my yin-yang?
Fun-loving guy. He was going to have a few beers,
Let's finish this and then go out and knock down a couple of cold ones and meet something pretty.
Fantastic. Hey.
If it wasn't fun for Don, he wasn't going to do it.
It overshadowed how much he wanted to win.
But believe me, he took his football serious. I think he should be higher than that. Playing against him twice a year, I saw this guy. This guy had real good ability.
I don't think he gets nearly enough appreciation.
The thing that people don't know about Don is how tough he was.
He played at a time when we were a sorry team, and he got killed.
He took a ferocious beating in this league.
Once Bob Hayes came here and Lance Rensel came here, Don Meredith came into his own as a quarterback.
It's not only one word for Don Meredith to me, and that's great.
He was as good a big game quarterback as there was in the league at the time.
Meredith led the Cowboys to the NFL championship game in 1966 and 67, but lost both times. In the 1968 playoffs, Dallas lost again, despite a heroic effort from our number 9 Cowboy.
Meredith got out of the hospital with a broken rib, punctured lung, and pneumonia, and then came home and took a lot of abuse about his performance.
We went into this restaurant and they started booing him, stood up and booed him until we left.
And that's when he quit.
Unfortunately, in Dallas, if you don't win it all, there's just that little, but he didn't do this.
Nobody likes losers, and especially Texans.
There's never been a guy who has been more mistreated by the fans than Don Meredith was.
People who were critical of him when he did play almost feel bad about how they treated him while he was here.
Dandy Don Meredith was a really good quarterback, but he was an even better broadcaster for Monday Night Football.
The guy that you saw on television with Cosell, that's who he is.
Redneck and White Sox and Blue Ribbon beer, hot doggy.
He wouldn't have had a legacy were it not for Monday Night Football. Once his personality shined through on Monday Night Football, then people looked back on his career with the Cowboys and I think noticed, hey, this guy was awfully good.
That's encouraging. Thank you for talking about. All right.
The number 8 Cowboy of all time, the Manster Randy White.
For me, coaching against him twice a year for 7 years might be the finest defensive player that I ever have coached against.
One of the most feared defensive tackles in the history of the National Football League.
But Randy White almost didn't even play defensive tackle in the NFL.
They spent 2 years trying to make him a middle linebacker.
Randy just unable to get himself in the right position.
I don't think his body goes backwards. And as such, he wasn't a very good linebacker at all.
That looked like it was going to be a poorly spent #1 draft choice on him.
Once the Cowboys decided that isn't his game, let's put him on the defensive line. He's a terrific player.
Our number 8 Cowboy became a Hall of Fame force who was named first team All-Pro 7 times.
Randy White jumps on him.
Randy White was ridiculous.
He may not have put up these incredible numbers. I think it's because he was always double or triple teamed. One of the top 2 or 3 most dominant Cowboys, just sheer dominance every year.
Randy White, you talk about a guy who was devastating.
Randy White was a bagger, and if I weren't on television, I'd use a different term.
Just a stone-cold nut.
On game day, this meek, humble person turned into a monster.
He was the Manster.
His name is Randy White. His nickname, Manster.
We call Randy White Manster around here. It's half man, half monster.
I've never been afraid of anything, and Randy White scared me.
He's one of those guys, you know, if you had to pick somebody to go down the dark alley with, he'd be probably the first guy I would say, yeah, let's get it on. Let's go.
He created a war on every snap. He was mean. Boy, he was tough.
Randy White killed everybody every day, not just Sunday. He killed them in practice on Wednesday. He was out killing people on his off day on Tuesday.
If half of the stories are true about Randy White, he's still one of the scariest people I've ever heard of.
He's a super competitor. I mean, the guy has only one speed, and it's top speed.
He played football as if it was life and death on every single play.
I remember a play in Dallas. Scott Fitzke caught a pass across the middle, running for a touchdown. You know who caught him from behind? Randy White. Dragged him down, short of the goal line. Incredible, incredible play. A defensive lineman catching a wide receiver from behind.
You wouldn't want to play 2 downs against him right now. His competitiveness was off the charts.
He was physically gifted, but there were more physically gifted guys in the National Football League than him. But I don't know that there was anybody more driven on a defensive line than Randy White in the last 40 years. That's why he belongs on your list.
Randy White's one of the greatest football players that ever played the sport. And for him to not be in the top 5 on this list is, in my opinion, a mistake.
Some 90s Cowboys just missed making our list. Darryl Moose Johnston, who spent his entire 11-year career in Dallas, was considered.
To be considered to be on the list is a compliment in my opinion.
Jay Novacek was the linchpin tight end during the dynasty days.
Jay Novacek, touchdown!
I don't think people really understood what Jay Novacek was to us.
And Larry Allen anchored the Cowboys' O-line, clearing the path for 3 Super Bowl titles.
And Dallas, your Cowboys are world champions again.
Next on our list is a running back who carried Dallas to their 2nd world title.
The number 7 Cowboy of all time, Tony T.D. Dorsett.
Oh, man, Tony Dorsett. Love to watch him.
Dorsett was an electrifying running back.
I'm not a bulldog type of runner. I'm a runner that you, your grandmother, or someone else could probably enjoy watching because there's something exciting that's possible to happen at any time.
He is at the 5. He scores. Touchdown.
Tony had star power.
And once he touched the ball, the spotlight was his.
In 1977, the Heisman Trophy winner from Pittsburgh arrived in Dallas, determined to win a Lombardi Trophy.
I really do believe he should be higher than number 7.
When they drafted Tony Dorsett, everything changed.
It's nice to be here.
The Cowboys instantly became a great team when they got him.
All of a sudden, everything clicks.
Coach Landry comes in and he says, okay, Tony's a different type of runner, and he's going to run to what he sees.
Handoff, Dorsett, right guard to the 10, to the 5, touchdown! Tony Dorsett has scored his first touchdown as a pro.
From that point on, I was able to become TD and be myself.
They get him in 77. Automatically, they're Super Bowl champions.
Staubach has it, hands it off to Dorsett, drives, touchdown! the Dallas Cowboys are the champions of the National Football League.
The first thing that comes to mind,
speed and quickness.
We used to call him the glider because it looked like his feet weren't touching the ground.
And then when he got the ball, look out.
Hands it off to Dorsett, into the secondary, to the 30, 35.
into the secondary before anybody had time to react.
Catch right, watch out. The 10, the 5, Tony Dorsett, touchdown.
Seemed like he had to play like that every game.
A first ballot Hall of Famer, Dorsett played 11 years in Dallas, scored 92 touchdowns, and gained more than 12,000 yards.
That first step was amazing. I don't know if anybody to this day had the acceleration that Dorsett had.
That natural ability's there. You know, you can't teach it, you can't coach it.
To the 10, goes to the outside, 5, touchdown.
He's just a natural, fluid runner.
Tony Dorsett could go east and west and make it north or south.
Cut and slash and go 80 right now.
50, the 40, he's to the 30, the 20, the 10, the 5, Tony Dorsett, touchdown.
You know, they called him Hawk because he had those eyes and he would look and find an opening.
I get a ball in my eyes, they light up like silver dollars.
On plays that were designed to go to the right, he would bend it all the way back to the other side, and you could just see where the hole was going to be.
Breaks the tackle.
And he could see into the future.
He could turn and change direction. A complete 90-degree turn on a dime, go right by somebody.
He is in, touchdown Dallas.
And here's one reason short of 100 why he's our number 7 Cowboy.
What do you have, a 99-yard run?
Handoff Dorsett up the middle.
Longest run in NFL history. First step, and he got outside and gone.
Here he goes. Cuts to his right.
Still don't know how he stayed in bounds.
He's got 2 men to beat. To the 10, the 5, touchdown!
So fitting that Dorsett is the guy who's always going to be a part of that record.
He was the quintessential home run hitter in football.
I think he's one of the 10 greatest running backs in the history of the game, so he surely belongs on your Cowboy top 10 list.
The number 6 Cowboy of all time, Troy Aikman.
You got to be kidding me. He's ranked there.
Great as those teams were, none of it works if Aikman's not there.
Cowboys are back on top of the mountain now.
You have to have him in the top 5.
He's the engine that drove the machine.
They were there in the 70s, fell off in the 80s. They're back on top, and they should stay there a while.
The number 6 Cowboy on our list was a number 1 draft pick in 1989. He owned the 90s, leading Dallas to 90 wins, the second most wins for any decade in NFL history.
Easily the greatest leader after Staubach, and no one's come close to him since.
What fans saw on Sunday, his teammates saw every day of the week.
This man right here was our leader. There was no doubt, no wavering whatsoever.
There's no room for error. Damn it! And we needed our leader to be that way.
Big night, guys. Let's start fast and let's compete. 60 minutes. Let's go win on 3. 1, 2, 3, win.
When Aikman was in the huddle, he completely commanded it.
I right, zip. Power right. On one.
Even a loudmouth receiver like Irvin, he knew how to handle Irvin.
We can't have negative plays.
Knew when to yell.
Hey, guys, that's a embarrassment out there.
Knew when to just lead by example.
Aikman straight drop, looking left, going for the end zone. Novacek at the 2, takes it in. Touchdown, Cowboys.
Here comes Aikman, and they win 3 Super Bowls.
1-15 in '89 to the Super Bowl, 4 years. That's unbelievable.
I've never seen a more accurate quarterback.
He's the most accurate thrower I think has ever played the position.
Deep ball on a hitch to Irvin, and it's caught.
When he was hot, he was as good as I've ever seen. No question about it.
Talk to Irvin about the guy's accuracy.
If I closed my eyes to run 10 routes, I believe 8 of them would have hit me right in the hands.
It couldn't have been thrown any better.
Troy's ball comes at you like a missile, and then it stops right here, and it looks at you and says, "Catch me, please."
Supersonic laser blast from Aikman to Irvin.
Aikman captured the hearts of Dallas fans and never let them down. Well, on the field, that is.
His best football was in the playoffs.
Some of his greatest games were when they needed him the most in the playoffs.
Touchdown! Oh, what a play!
how he performed in the most important games of his career, playoff games, Super Bowl games. He was almost flawless.
The six-time Pro Bowler is the Cowboys' all-time leading passer. Number 8 led Dallas to 3 Super Bowl wins and was the MVP of Super Bowl 27.
Troy Aikman's the MVP.
Some argue that his lack of numbers should put him lower on our list of numbers.
I'm a big stats guy. The thing about Troy Aikman that is tough to get past is the fact that he had one season in his career where he had more than 20 touchdowns. 20 touchdowns, that's very pedestrian.
He caught it! Touchdown!
The numbers aren't important.
The only statistic Aikman cared about was winning.
Football's about winning championships, and Troy was 3 for 3.
And Dallas, you can celebrate because your Cowboys are world champions again.
Before we continue our countdown of the top 10 Dallas Cowboys, let's recap the list so far.
Number 10, Drew Pearson hailed as the go-to guy.
Pearson makes the catch at the 5, touchdown!
He was clutch.
Number 9, the charismatic quarterback Don Meredith.
Because that's what kind of guy he is. A real turd.
Number 8, Randy White bullies his way into the countdown.
Randy White, you talk about a guy who was devastating.
Randy White scared me.
Number 7, Tony Dorsett lights up the list.
And once he touched the ball, the spotlight was his.
Number 6, Troy Aikman resurrects America's team.
This is the guy who's going to save the franchise.
The Cowboys are back on top of the mountain now.
And now, the number 5 Cowboy of all time, Emmitt Smith.
I don't see 4 other Cowboys that could be ahead of Emmitt. He's the all-time leading rusher.
Early in his career, man, he was doing some things. He made me jump up out of my chair.
Now it's Emmitt Smith time.
When you have all these Hall of Famers, somebody's got to be 5th.
Our number 5 Cowboy has a Hall of Fame resume that lands him in the top tier of our list.
First down at the 20. The 15, he's gone.
Cowboys didn't want to draft Emmitt. Emmitt was still sitting there at like 17. They said, well, we got him ranked up here. I guess we better take him.
Good running back. I thought he'd have a nice career, but he's so overachieved.
Aikman draw to Smith. Tackles but breaks away to the 10, to the 5. Touchdown, Emmitt Smith.
And I remember him first walking in with the MC Hammer type pants, and I thought, where do we get this guy? But when he took that football field, it was like he turned into Superman.
Unbelievable! Unbelievable!
Emmitt was an incredible warrior.
There's no question our number 5 Cowboy owns the gutsiest performance in Dallas history.
I watched him basically beat the Giants single-handedly with his shoulder falling out of its socket.
Smith is down.
Everything on the line in terms of the division title and home field advantage in the playoffs, and Emmitt Smith is out there with one arm.
Touchdown, Emmitt Smith.
Cowboys eventually snapped the ball 68 or 69 times, and Emmitt got it 42 of those times. Outrageous.
They'll never forget the day Emmitt Smith ran 32 times for 170 yards and caught 10 balls for 62 and did most of it with one arm.
Year in and year out, no matter what pounding he took, he still showed up, he still moved the chains, he still generated the yards.
The middle breaks a tackle. Emmitt Smith breaking a beheading tackle.
Just a workhorse.
Smith to the goal line. Touchdown, Emmitt Smith. Happy Thanksgiving, Emmitt.
That was an offense built around him. Let's just put it on his back and let's go.
Smith for 3, Smith for 8, Smith for 7.
Now, was Emmitt going 80 every time? No.
Handoff, Smith coming right, trying to outrun the coverage.
Emmitt can't outrun Deion Sanders.
Makes a cut.
But he could get to that pylon first.
He's going to score. Absolutely ridiculous.
Emmitt Smith, the greatest running back in history? No. The leading rusher in history? Yes.
Handoff, Smith, 35, 40-yard line. That should do it.
That's the kind of an accomplishment that's impossible to overlook.
Move over, sweetness. Make a place for Emmitt.
There's only one NFL rushing champion, and there's only one Emmitt Smith.
Emmitt has the numbers and the records, so why isn't he higher on our list? It just wasn't in the cards.
Even though he's one of the great all-time running backs, you've got to spend your whole career with the Cowboys to be one of the top all-time Cowboys.
Hurts me to this day. shouldn't have happened.
No, it doesn't matter that Emmett played for the Cardinals.
People like Emmitt Smith should never have gone anywhere else to play football.
You don't know how much this star really mean to me.
They meant too much to the original team.
How do you feel about a second Super Bowl?
2 in a row. How sweet it is.
I think he is, without question, as the all-time leading rusher with the 3 Super Bowl rings, he's a top 5 Cowboy.
Wow, Emmitt Smith, number 5. That means there's 4 players ahead of him. Holy cow, who could that be?
The number 4 Cowboy of all time, Mr. Cowboy, Bob Lilly.
Bob Lilly was the guy.
He's one of the guys that's on a pedestal for Dallas Cowboy fans.
I put Bob Lilly number 1 on my list. I think he's the greatest Cowboy of all time.
Do you put Bob Lilly ahead of Tony Dorsett? Do you put him ahead of Emmitt Smith? I don't know, but he needs to be in the top 5. He is Mr. Cowboy.
He was the team's first ever draft choice, the first All-Pro selection, the first Pro Bowl player, and is a charter member of our club's coveted Ring of Honor in Texas Stadium.
He was the Dallas Cowboys. He helped this franchise go from nothing, no wins in that first year, to being Super Bowl champions.
It's the greatest thing that's ever happened to me. I can't express my feeling right now. It's fantastic.
He was the first guy that Cowboy fans really embraced and could really relate to, and he just seemed like the perfect first face of the franchise.
Born and raised in Texas, Bob Lilly is the prototypical cowboy and a Dallas legend.
They were right to call him Mr. Cowboy. It's a fitting nickname, Mr. Cowboy.
He had the country accent. He had that down-home, humble aura about him.
He looks like Texas.
Oh, by the way, I'm a defensive tackle.
It had no suntan. He was just white all over, no muscle definition. But when he put those pads on, number 74 was an unbelievable football player.
What a save by Bob Lilly.
The first great player in Cowboy history. The first great player.
Our number 4 Cowboy played in 11 Pro Bowls in 14 seasons and never missed a regular season game.
Bob Lilly was a majestic defensive player. He was magnificent.
Now Lilly hits him at the 25.
Bob Lilly dominated games. He changed games. He was unblockable.
He would knife through offensive linemen instead of riding them out.
He required 2 blockers every play.
He takes a handoff, and he's stopped by Lilly again.
They triple-teamed Bob Lilly and still couldn't block him.
I thought Bob Lilly was the greatest defensive lineman I ever saw.
He never gave up on a play, and that's what separates the guys that live in Canton and the guys that played this game.
If they scored, they were going to have to crawl over dead bodies. That's how we felt.
If you looked at Lilly work, if you looked at how hard he played, I think a lot of his teammates felt badly if they didn't give the same kind of effort because they realized the kind of effort Lilly gave play after play.
Here's one of the great original Cowboys.
He was just a phenomenal football player that really didn't have a mean streak in his body. If he had been a guy that, was really mean, they would have had to outlaw him.
The anchor of the Doomsday defense was mean enough to make our list and talented enough to make everyone else's.
Sporting News did their list of the 100 greatest players in NFL history. Lilly was 10th, and that was the highest ranking Cowboy.
One of the greatest sayings I've ever heard was by Jim Brown. That says a great football player can transcend eras. I think Bob Lilly is one of those guys. I think Bob Lilly could transcend eras.
He deserves to be very high on the list. Some would say number 1 because he is Mr. Cowboy.
With only 10 spots in the countdown, we had to leave off Dan Reeves, whose Cowboy career as a player and coach spanned 3 different decades.
Not a top 10er, but I definitely would put him in that next 10.
Reeves had a front row seat to watch the NFL's first pure speed demon, Bullet Bob Hayes.
Bob Hayes just happens to be the world's fastest living human.
But we saved room for another Hall of Fame receiver.
The number 3 Cowboy of all time, the playmaker Michael Irvin.
Who's 3?
You are.
Oh, they got me 3?
Yeah.
Get out of here. Are you serious?
I'm serious.
Who did this ranking? When you said Troy was 5 or 6 and Emmett, I was like, man, did I even get in this list? You know what I mean? I got a little worried.
In the 1980s, the University of Miami was the college football team of the decade. In the 1990s, the Dallas Cowboys were the professional football team of the decade.
Cowboys back to back in the half.
There was one constant throughout both of those reigns, and his name is Michael Irvin.
After 2 straight losing seasons, the Cowboys needed a playmaker. So in the 1988 draft, they called on the playmaker.
After the Cowboys had been so bad for a couple of years, Michael Irvin blew into that building, and I remember Tex Schramm saying, well, with this kid, we've just accelerated our return to the living.
In 1991, our number 3 Cowboy was named first-team All-Pro. As he led the NFL in receiving yards for his first 5 straight Pro Bowl seasons.
Oh, man!
The playmaker was equally entertaining after the catch.
He had a swagger coming out of Miami that was magnified in Dallas.
Showtime!
He was a guy who said, look, I know I'm great. I'm going to tell you beforehand I'm going to kick your ass, then I'm going to kick your ass, and then afterward I'm going to remind you very loudly about how I just kicked your ass.
And who do you think it is? Michael Irvin. What I do? Make plays. Nothing but make plays, baby.
Don't confuse flamboyance, enthusiasm for selfishness. He was never selfish.
The most remarkable thing about Michael is he knew there are nights Michael was still out on the street at 2 or 3 in the morning.
Hi, having fun. Aloha.
And yet Michael would be in at 5:30 in the morning working out, and you said to yourself, when in the world does he sleep?
Is it Michael Irvin or Michelangelo?
He was the hardest worker on his team. For every day he wore a Dallas Cowboy uniform.
He basically showed this team how to work. He showed this team how to win.
It was the off season, and on the field, Michael Irvin by himself running routes. And I'm watching this guy through the window. He throws up, he sits there for a while, gets back on that line, he ran about 10, 15 more routes. His work ethic was, you couldn't match it.
Every time I trained to the point of exhaustion and I couldn't go any farther, I would say, now, are you a Hall of Famer or not?
In 2007, our number 3 Cowboy was inducted into the Hall of Fame. But even with a spot in Canton, not everyone agrees with his spot on our list.
Michael Irvin, number 3, is a tough one.
Should Michael Irvin be number 3? I know why you can make the argument, though. Because Michael Irvin may have been the heartbeat of those great Cowboys teams that won 3 Super Bowls in 4 years.
It's simply the best.
Michael Irvin was the guy who, more than anyone, established them as a great team in the 90s.
Get your damn job done today!
The problem with putting Irvin in the top 5, I think, is his off-field behavior.
Michael Irvin may have created more controversy than anybody in Cowboy history, but he was the epitome of what you want in a leader.
We in this game! Damn it, we in this game!
There's never been a player in the Cowboys' history who was a better and more effective team leader than Michael Irvin.
The Cowboys have been blessed with outstanding defensive backs who didn't make the countdown. Hall of Famer Mel Renfro notched 10 straight Pro Bowl seasons and remains the Cowboys' all-time leader in interceptions. Deion Sanders was not only a shutdown cornerback in Dallas, he was one of the all-time great return aces.
High step dance to the goal line. Touchdown, Cowboys!
Sanders was prime time. Our next Cowboy delivered in crunch time.
The number 2 Cowboy of all time, Captain Comeback Roger Staubach.
Roger Staubach epitomizes the Dallas Cowboys from their inception to today. The only problem I would have with Roger Staubach being on your list is the fact that he's not number 1. Roger Staubach was the man.
Play together all day long. Let's go.
Everything that Aikman was on his teams, Staubach was that and more in the 70s.
Roger back to throw across the middle. Touchdown.
The quintessential Cowboy legend.
We're 3, set.
After winning the Heisman at Navy, Staubach served his country in Vietnam. In 1969, he began serving the Cowboys.
Rolling back is Staubach, looking, firing down the middle, touchdown for Dallas.
Our number 2 Cowboy led Dallas to 4 Super Bowl appearances and its first pair of championships in 1971 and 77.
Roger goes deep across the middle. Crunch Johnson caught. Touchdown.
Intense leader. Intense competitor.
He wanted it more than
anybody I'd ever seen. If you're lifting weights, he would get a weight he was comfortable at and say, hey, I bet I can lift this more times than you. And dang if he wouldn't. I mean, he would die doing it.
When you've got a leader that wants to win that badly, it rubs off on everybody.
And of course, there were the fourth quarter comebacks.
And I still believe today, with 2 minutes to go and 75 yards, I'll take Roger Staubach with any quarterback in the National Football League. History.
Captain Comeback was born in the 1972 playoffs. But that was just one of 23 career fourth quarter comebacks, none more memorable than the Hail Mary.
Staubach hit Pearson on a 50-yard touchdown.
He had the ability to pull things out of the most dire situations.
No matter how much time was left in the ballgame.
42 seconds left in the game. Redskins lead by 6.
I always believed that Roger could win the game.
Staubach throwing in the end zone. Tony Hill! Touchdown! Tony Hill!
If he had a down, he had a chance.
The Cowboys have come from behind.
Roger Staubach has got to be number one.
I can't think of a player more respected by everybody from generation to generation than Roger the Dodger.
He figured out at an early age that he was going to be a saint. I mean, that's really what he is. He's Saint Roger Staubach.
You know, I enjoy sex as much as Joe Namath. Only I do it with one girl.
Roger Staubach remains in Dallas a leader of the community.
That has put him in a place where I don't think we'll ever see another athlete from here get. Number one, without a doubt.
Before we reveal our number one Dallas Cowboy of all time, let's recap the list so far.
Number 10, the original 88, Drew Pearson.
When you think Cowboys of the 70s, Drew Pearson is a big part of it.
The Dallas Cowboys are the champions of the National Football League.
Number 9, Dandy Don Meredith.
You guys want some close-ups?
You know, if it wasn't fun for Don, he wasn't going to do it.
Number 8, the Manster, Randy White.
One of the most feared defensive tackles in the history of the National Football League.
Number 7, Tony T.D. Dorsett.
99 yards.
Quintessential home run hitter in football.
Number 6, Troy Aikman, always on the money.
He's the most accurate thrower I think that's ever played the position.
It couldn't have been thrown any better.
Number 5, the NFL's all-time leading rusher, Emmitt Smith.
Move over, sweetness. Make a place for Emmitt.
Number 4, Mr. Cowboy, Bob Lilly.
Had no suntan, no muscle definition, but number 74 was an unbelievable football player.
What a save by Bob Lilly.
Number 3, the playmaker, Michael Irvin.
And who do you think it is? Michael Irvin. What I do? Make plays. Nothing but make plays, baby.
Number 2, Captain Comeback, Roger Staubach.
The quintessential Cowboy legend.
And now, the number one Dallas Cowboy of all time, Tom Landry.
It has to be Tom Landry.
Yeah, I don't think you can go wrong with Coach Landry.
When you announce it, every Cowboy fan goes, yeah, all right. Yeah, geez, yeah. Why didn't I think of that?
The nuts and bolts of the Dallas Cowboys is a man that wears a funny hat.
You thought Dallas Cowboys from 1960 to 1989, you thought Tom Landry.
After nearly a quarter of a century, Tom Landry is still the only head coach the Dallas Cowboys have ever had.
The silhouette shot of him on the sideline, that was the Cowboys' identity.
I don't think there was anything about Coach Landry that you didn't look at him and say, this is the Dallas Cowboys. I'd say, without question, he'd be number one.
The generation that came after Vince Lombardi, Tom Landry is the coaching icon.
Go hard, that away, go hard.
He was his own offensive coordinator and his own defensive coordinator. Okay, that's pretty strong.
No, yeah, you can use him pretty much in here. Yeah, you can use him.
He was an innovator.
Great football mind.
The man who wore this funny hat fashions some of the NFL's greatest thrills.
The offensive linemen all stood straight up and then went down into the three-point stance. They had the shotgun. They had all of these innovations.
Lineman's breaking outside. See, there's no use to send him out. Yeah. Just tell him to slow box, see?
So while all of this glitz was going on around Tom Landry, he was the quiet man in the fedora, the mastermind of the Cowboy experience.
For For 29 years as Dallas's head coach, Tom Landry transformed the Cowboys into America's team.
But Coach Landry is the architect of the entire organization, and the Dallas Cowboy organization isn't what it is today without Coach Landry there from the start.
My feelings about him are almost heresy. I think if you're going to compare Cowboy coaches, Jimmy is every bit as much the coach as Landry was.
How about them Cowboys?
There's a guy in our recent memory was only the second head coach of the Cowboys. That kind of tells you the story about Tom Landry, so I have no problem with him being number one.
He had a lot more personality than people gave him credit for. But he still was the guy who said nothing funny ever happened on the football field.
They asked Walt Garrison, have you ever seen Coach Landry smile? And he said, no, but I was only there 9 years.
No one has penetrated the gunfighter stare, the grim face that makes him look like a regional director of the FBI.
The expressionless guy walking the sideline, that was game day Coach Landry.
I'm not a rah-rah type of coach, especially on the sidelines.
Coach Landry felt like preparation was the greatest motivator.
It'll be
strategy, practice, planning, an overture to Sunday Symphony.
Coach Landry ran our team like a corporation. And we had goals, we had methods to obtain the goals, we had critical points to obtain the methods that attained the goals. The goal was to win the Super Bowl.
You can't argue with the numbers of our number one Cowboy, a professional sports record of 20 consecutive winning seasons.
Fires it deep for Goldie Richards. Caught, touchdown!
The Cowboys won, and the Cowboys had one winning season after another, after another, after another, and Tom Landry was the rock.
That's pretty nice. Congratulations. Really happy.
10 times his Cowboys played in the NFC Championship game, 5 trips to the Super Bowl, and 2 World Championships.
And the Cowboy coach, Tom Landry, getting a ride off on the shoulders of his team. The Dallas Cowboys are the champions of the National Football League.
I still think Roger Staubach should be number one, but when you throw out a name like Tom Landry as the Dallas Cowboys, it's really hard to argue.
Hundreds of men have been part of America's team, so it wasn't easy narrowing it down to just the top 10.
Once again, it's a demonstration that this Cowboys organization is just flat out spoiled.
I mean, I hate the Cowboys.
Dallas, we hate you. Dallas.
The fact that you have an argument of Dorsett versus Emmett or Troy versus Roger, it's such an embarrassment of riches when you go down the list.
Dandy Don.
Too Tall Jones.
And then Roger.
DeMarcus Ware's a great player.
Leroy Jordan.
You got to have a Randy White in there.
Danny White.
Chuck Howley.
I would think Leon Lett.
Preston and Drew Pearson.
It makes your head spin at times compared to other franchises in the league.
It's clear this list is debatable, but as they say, opinions are like assholes. Everybody's got one. One thing's for sure, America's team always gives us something to talk about.
The only thing else I got to say is...